The nature of the sphere is extremely challenging. One, because it's handcrafted itself, and that creates a few challenges in sort of warps and undulations on the surface. And so when you've got lines, such as the latitudes, to think about and aligning countries and text, that adds a whole new concept of complexity, whereas with wallpapering, you've got that flat surface where you're aligning almost pretty much bang on every time.
That's the head globe maker at Bellerby Co, a British globe company that makes globes of all shapes, sizes, and kinds. You can get one that fits on your desk, one that sits comfortably down on the floor, or one that's more than 1.5 meters tall. The one on the stand, not in the hand. Hell, this person appears to be working on one in the shape of an egg. Perhaps our Earth's molten core would actually taste great with toast. But hey, when you've got a bunch of in-studio cartographers and a bunch of globes that cost anywhere from 1,000 to more than 60,000 British pounds, you're free, albeit at a high cost, to craft the world you wish to inhabit.
Google Earth is amazing. Quite how we managed to do anything before it came along, I don't know. I mean, I use it on a daily basis. It's an incredible device to enable you to live life and function.
That's the founder of this globe company, who notes that even in our digital world, where anyone with an internet connection has free access to tools that can transport you in seconds from outer space to the roof of a Chuck E. Cheese pizza in Washington, a physical globe can still help people imagine their place in the cosmos.
But you don't go onto Google Earth to get inspired by things. You don't traipse down streets on Google Earth looking at the images that you get there, because it's very raw footage. It's not aesthetic. A globe is very much something that connects you to the planet that we live on.
Britannica observes that globes have been around since the days of the ancient Greeks. Contrary to some reports on your Facebook feed, planet Earth is round. And today, they're not just used for navigation or picking a random place to go on vacation. Just one cursory browse of Etsy and you can find variations that can serve as a lamp, remind you about your wedding, and even conceal your drinking problem. Of course, if you insist you don't have a drinking problem, some globes can even go ahead and get you drunk right at your desk. But when it comes to crafting globes like these things in the UK, as I'm sure you can tell by all these brushes, steamers, and people spinning around globes on tables, crafting a high-end one of these things is indeed a significant undertaking. This company makes about 600 globes a year in various shapes and sizes. Looking at you, egg. And the whole thing is a complex process. After making a sphere, they apply these petal-shaped panels called gores that then get fitted around the surface. And after that, artists get to work on applying paint to fill in the lands and the seas. On this globe here, for instance, the blue is the ocean.
Every country has a different viewpoint on the world, so cartography is very much a nationalistic thing. It's not, the UN is most certainly not the overarching governing body of what countries exist in the world.
Yeah, as our founder here notes, when you're making a globe, customs officials in places with disputed borders pay extra attention to those fine lines across the sphere.
For China, we definitely have to mark Taiwan as Chinese Taipei in order for it just to get through customs. In other territories, in India, I can go to prison for 6 months if we don't depict the border between India and Pakistan as the Delhi government want us to. So we have to get things like that right.
So why a globe and not a map? I mean, there are a couple of things that you can say about that.
This man staring at globes is the director of the Whipple Museum of the History of Science in Cambridge, pointing out that yes, there are different use cases for 3-dimensional globes and 2-dimensional maps.
First is that perhaps whereas a map might be quite a mundane, practical item that is produced to be used, to be drawn on, to be looked at, a globe is often a much more prestigious, valuable item, so perhaps its representational power is greater because it will sit there as an item potentially of prestige, of display, to represent perhaps the learning, the erudition, the political interests of its owner.
The head of this Bellerby Globe company told the Associated Press that he doesn't name the clients of his company's globes. And while he says that they come from multiple socioeconomic backgrounds, their globes have been sold to everyone from families to heads of state. At one of the several museums that bear his name, a billionaire German hardware magnate by way of the wholesale screw business has a Churchill, one of those giant 65,000 British pound models put out by Bellerby, that he received as a gift for his 83rd birthday. This year, I got a gift card for the shirt that I'm wearing right now. But then again, I'm not 83, despite what you think in the comments.
Perhaps sadly, I think globe usage probably is declining, perhaps particularly in the school setting where digital technologies are taking over and are perhaps more affordable, they're more accessible, that's a good thing. But globes themselves, we see, I think, fewer and fewer of them in school spaces.
While this globe doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, relatively speaking, of course, after all, we are hurtling through space, and experts think in a cool 7.5 billion years will be absorbed by the sun, it remains an open question as to whether or not the humble globe will be relevant as something more than an alternative to a wedding guest book or a symbol for those seeking to demonstrate status.
I think now they're perhaps more becoming items of overt prestige. They're being bought as display pieces to look beautiful, which of course they always have been that. There's always been globes made as items of prestige, but I think that's probably a bigger role. I would argue that they could and should still have a role for teaching us about the nature of the globe,